Hello everyone, welcome back to Dugout Daily. I'm Charlie and today we have another video. This time we are previewing the match where Chelsea returned to Wembley almost 2 months on from their Carabao Cup final defeat for an FA Cup semi-final showdown with holders Manchester City on Saturday evening. Before we get going, make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Dugout Daily, the football channel. Hit the Apex the F1 channel and at MCFC Hibs on Twitter. We will get going then, and the victors of this All Premier League clash will face the winners of the second semi-final between Championship outfit Coventry and Manchester United. We will start then with the FA Cup form of both teams, as Manchester City have won 4 in a row to reach this stage of the FA Cup, whereas Chelsea needed a replay in the 4th round, with their run being a win, a draw and 3 wins. Last time out for both teams, starting with Manchester City, was a 4-3 loss on penalties on Wednesday at 8 o'clock in the Champions League against Real Madrid after a 1-1 draw. And last time out for Chelsea was a 6-0 win at home to Everton on Monday at 8 p.m. in the Premier League. Manchester City have scored 76 goals in the Premier League this season, whereas Chelsea have scored 61. And the form of both sides, starting with Manchester City, we have only lost 1 of our last 6 in all competitions, with that run being a 0-0 draw at home to Arsenal, a 4-1 win at home to Aston Villa, a 4-2 win away at Crystal Palace, a 3-3 draw away to Real Madrid, a 5-1 win at home to Luton, and a 4-3 loss on penalties after a 1-1 draw at home to Real Madrid. Chelsea are unbeaten in their last 6, with that run being a 3-2 win at home to Newcastle, a 4-2 win at home to Leicester, a 2-2 draw at home to Burnley, a 4-3 win at home to Manchester United, a 2-2 draw away at Sheffield United, and a 6-0 win at home to Everton. Manchester City's top scorer this season is Erling Haaland, as he scored 20 Premier League goals and 33 in all competitions. His last league goal was at home to Luton last Saturday. He scored 4 braces and a hat-trick this season. Chelsea's top scorer is Cole Palmer, who has scored 20 goals in the Premier League this season and 23 in all competitions. His last league goal was on Monday at home to Everton, and this season he's scored 2 braces, a hat-trick and 1 quadruple. Next up then, we will go to the match preview, as Manchester City's dreams of retaining our Champions League crown and celebrating unprecedented double treble are over after we were dethroned as Europe's finest by a team described by Pep Guardiola as the kings of the competition in 14-time winners Real Madrid. A week on from our enthralling 3-3 first leg draw in Spain, the citizens were left frustrated as we were forced to play out a 1-1 draw in the reverse fixture at the Etihad Stadium on Wednesday. Kevin De Bruyne cancelled out an early Rodrigo opener, but a resilient Los Blancos outfit sent the tie to penalties. Although Luka Modric missed Real's first spot kick, both Bernardo Silva and Mateo Kovacic failed to convert from 12 yards before Antonio Rudiger netted the decisive penalty to send City, who lacked a cutting edge in the final third despite boasting 33 shots, 68% possession and 18 corners prior to the shootout, packing at the quarter-final stage. Guardiola Rudy's sides missed opportunities in the tie, but the second leg draw in 90 minutes means that City have now equalled both our longest ever unbeaten run across all competitions, is 28 matches, and our longest ever unbeaten home run in all competitions to 42 matches. The citizens have little time to rest and regroup as we endeavour to end the season on a high by retaining 2 domestic trophies in the Premier League and FA Cup, starting with our record 6th successive appearance at the semi-final stage of the latter competition this weekend. City, who have already beaten Huddersfield, Tottenham, Luton and Newcastle in this season's FA Cup, have interestingly lost 3 of our last 5 matches at the semi-final stage, including a loss at the hands of Chelsea 1-0 in 2021. Guardiola and co have since put together an 8-game unbeaten run against the Blues, including 6 straight wins before back-to-back league draws earlier this season. While Manchester City are tasked with dusting ourselves down from a heartbreaking European exit, Chelsea enter Saturday's contest in buoyant mood after thrashing Everton 6-0 at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League on Monday, which is their biggest win to date since the arrival of head coach Mauricio Pochettino. Former Citizens youngster Cole Palmer has drawn level with Erling Haaland on 20 goals at the top of the Premier League scoring charts after netting 4, including a 29-minute hat-trick, while Nicholas Jackson and Alfie Gilchrist were also on target against the Toffees to help the West Londoners strengthen their hopes of securing European football for next season. Chelsea, who haven't lost any of their last 8 top-flight matches, capitalised on each of Wolves, Brighton, West Ham and Manchester United dropping points last weekend and have subsequently climbed up to 9th in the table, just 3 points behind 6th place Newcastle, who have played a game more. A challenging and potentially defining run of fixtures over the next few weeks await the Blues, who follow up Saturday's FA Cup clash against Manchester City with a trio of Premier League London derbies against Arsenal, Tottenham and West Ham. Chelsea have won just 2 of their last 15 games against these 4 teams combined since the start of last season. Chelsea have battled past Preston, Aston Villa, Leeds and Leicester in this season's FA Cup and are now gearing up for their 27th FA Cup semi-final. Only Manchester United with 32 and Arsenal with 30 have competed at this stage on more occasions in the competition's history, but the Blues have been eliminated from 5 of their last 7 FA Cup ties against Manchester City, including a humbling 4-0 loss in the 3rd round last season. Next up then, we will go to Cole Palmer, where Chelsea head coach Mauricio Pochettino has revealed how he wants Cole Palmer to improve if he's to remain a success at Stamford Bridge. Some eyebrows were raised when the Blues committed to paying Manchester City a fee of £42.5 million to secure the signature of then England under-21 star in the summer. However, Palmer has since produced an outstanding return in his first campaign with the West Londoners, as he's contributed 23 goals and 13 assists from 38 appearances in all competitions, as well as being joint top scorer in the Premier League. The 21-year-old is in the conversation for numerous individual awards. Palmer's latest performance saw him net 4 during the 6-0 demolition of Everton on Monday night, with one of his strikes being a goal of the season contender and another a lofted effort over Jordan Pickford from 40 yards out. While Pochettino acknowledges that the praise that Palmer is currently receiving is deserved, the Argentine has been quizzed on whether the England international can get better. Speaking at a pre-match press conference ahead of Saturday's FA Cup semi-final against Manchester City, Pochettino has revealed where he thinks Palmer must adapt to remain a success. He told reporters, first of all, it's to absorb the lots of pressure to play in the Premier League consistently. Then we were talking with Jesus Perez, the coaching staff, that it's about the demands in his private life. The demands are so high. He maybe needs to pay attention to different things that before he didn't pay attention. That's going to have an influence on how he prepares himself, how he's going to rest, how he's going to sleep, how he's going to spend his energy that sometimes before he didn't spend. This is why we need to be careful. We have experience, of course, to manage this kind of thing. When a young kid becomes a bigger star, his life changes. It's different with a senior player. He needs to learn from the experience now to deal with it. Earlier in the media briefing, Pochettino insisted that Parma doesn't have added motivation to get one over his former club, saying that he always speaks highly of City and manager Pep Guardiola. He added he has already played twice in the Premier League. He's very grateful for Manchester City, for Pep Guardiola. He always speaks very highly about Manchester City and Pep. He's not this type of player to have something inside. He understood perfectly that maybe for different reasons he wanted to prove himself at a different club. I think today we say thank you also to Manchester City for giving him the possibility to move to another club. I go back and say he's not this type of person who wants to prove something against his former club. He's very grateful about Pep and Manchester City. Chelsea revealed on Friday that they had received a triple injury boost ahead of the Wembley showdown, something which could impact on where Parma is used against the 2023 winners. Next up, then, we will go to Manchester City as we look to set a new unbeaten record. Manchester City will be looking to set a new unbeaten club record when we face Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-finals at Wembley on Saturday evening. The citizens had our dreams of winning an unprecedented double treble quashed in midweek as we were beaten on penalties by Real Madrid in the Champions League quarter-finals. Pep Guardiola's side was staring down the barrel of defeat in the second leg at the Etihad Stadium as we entered the final 15 minutes of normal time, a goal behind courtesy of Rodrigo's early first half opener. However, Kevin De Bruyne netted a 76th-minute equaliser to ensure Manchester City would avoid defeat in 90 minutes and take the tie to extra time. In the end, City were made to rue a plethora of missed opportunities and were unable to make our dominance count as a resilient Real Madrid outfit admirably held on to take the tie to penalties before knocking out the holders 4-3 in the shootout. Despite the defeat on penalties, Manchester City's draw in 90 minutes has seen us equal a century-old club record for our longest ever unbeaten home run in all competitions with 42 games. The citizens will have to wait until the 4th of May before we can attempt to break that record against Wolves in the Premier League, but Guardiola and co instead set a different unbeaten record in this weekend's FA Cup clash with Chelsea. Indeed, City will put together a 29-game unbeaten run in all competitions, home and away, for the first time in our history if we avoid defeat in 90 minutes against Mauricio Pochettino's side at Wembley. Achieving such a feat would see the citizens surpass our 28-game unbeaten streak we set between April and December 2017 in Guardiola's second year in charge of the club. Manchester City last tasted defeat on December the 6th when we lost 1-0 at Aston Villa in the Premier League, and we've since won 22 and drawn 5 of our last 28 matches across 4 different competitions. Guardiola has acknowledged the disappointment he and his Manchester City side felt in the immediate aftermath of Wednesday's penalty shootout defeat, but the Catalan boss has encouraged his players to not dwell on the result and bounce back with victory over Chelsea at the weekend. Asked at his pre-match press conference on Friday whether his Manchester City squad are ready to return to action, Guardiola said, "We have no other option. We can't feel sorry for ourselves. In football, you lose games. We performed at our best and we couldn't win. We will reflect in the summer about what happened during the season. You compete to win. It hasn't happened many times in the last seasons, but sometimes you lose games. That's what's happened. The mood today is better than yesterday, and tomorrow better than today. We did everything to beat Real Madrid. They know it, we know it, but it wasn't enough. We congratulate them, and tomorrow, FA Cup." Manchester City's recent record against Chelsea bodes well ahead of Saturday's contest, as we haven't lost any of our last 8 meetings with the West Londoners in all competitions, as we've won 6 and drew 2, including 2 enthralling draws in the Premier League this season. Next up, then, we go to the head-to-head, as returning to Wembley for the first time since winning the FA Cup 10 months ago, holders Manchester City do battle with Chelsea in the semi-finals on Saturday evening. The citizens travel to the capital on the back of suffering penalty shootout heartbreak at the hands of Real Madrid in the Champions League quarter-finals on Wednesday night. Chelsea, meanwhile, haven't lost any of their last 8 games in all competitions since they were beaten 1-0 after extra time by Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final in February, with Mauricio Pochettino's side most recently thumping Everton 6-0 in the Premier League on Monday. Manchester City and Chelsea have already butted heads on 2 occasions this season, and if those encounters, along with a host of others over the years, are anything to go by, supporters could be in for a treat under the Wembley Arch this weekend. There has been 176 previous meetings between these two sides, as Manchester City have won 63, Chelsea have won 71, and there's been 42 draws. Manchester City and Chelsea have locked horns a total of 176 times, with the West Londoners marginally leading the overall head-to-head record as they've won 71 compared to the Citizens' 63, while 42 draws have been played out between the two clubs. You have to go back 116 years for the very first encounter between these two teams, who played out a 2-2 draw in the top flight in front of 40,000 fans at Stamford Bridge back in December 1907. In the Premier League era, Chelsea have come out on top in 27 of the 54 meetings with Manchester City as they've lost 18 and drew 9, but the Citizens have beat the Blues in 5 of our 8 FA Cup encounters and have also won 3 out of 4 Carabao Cup meetings, including one via a penalty shootout in the 2019 final. The only other occasion when these two sides have faced off in a final of a major competition was in May 2021, when a first half goal from Kai Havertz helped Chelsea secure a narrow 1-0 win over Manchester City in the Champions League showpiece event held in Porto. Chelsea were the dominant side in the fixture with Manchester City during the first half of the Premier League era, as they registered 18 wins out of 24 and scored 45 in the process. Their longest ever winning run against the Citizens was an 8-match streak between December 2005 and March 2009. However, the tides have since shifted into Manchester City's favour as we've come out on top in 16 of the last 30 top flight battles with Chelsea, as we've scored a total of 47 goals. The West Londoners, meanwhile, have won 9 during this period, and there have also been 5 draws. Chelsea have failed to win any of their last 8 meetings with Pep Guardiola's side in all competitions, as they lost 6 in a row immediately after their aforementioned Champions League triumph over the Citizens in 2021, before playing out 2 entertaining draws in the Premier League this season. One of the most enthralling top-flight games of the current campaign took place at Stamford Bridge when Chelsea and Manchester City shared the spoils in a 4-4 draw in November last year. Rodri thought he'd won it for the visitors with an 86th-minute strike, but ex-City man Cole Palmer had the last laugh as he converted a 94th-minute penalty to salvage a point for Pochettino's men. There was nothing to separate the two teams in our most recent meeting at the Etihad Stadium in February, as Rodri netted in the 83rd minute to cancel out a first-half strike from former Manchester City attacker Raheem Sterling and force a spirited Chelsea outfit to settle for only a point. Manchester City legend Sergio Aguero is the all-time leading scorer in this fixture with 13 goals in 21 games, including 2 Premier League hat-tricks, while Frank Lampard, who represented both the Citizens and Chelsea, is next on the list with 8 goals, including 7 for the West Londoners. Former Chelsea forward Jimmy Greaves and ex-Manchester City duo Carlos Tevez and Francis Lee all scored 6. So the last 20 meetings between these two sides, starting on September the 30th, 2017, was a 1-0 away win for Manchester City in the Premier League. We then beat Chelsea 1-0 at home in the Premier League on March the 4th, 2018. On August the 5th, 2018, we won the Community Shield 2-0, before on December the 8th, 2018, Chelsea won 2-0 in the Premier League. Manchester City then won 6-0 in the Premier League on February the 10th, 2019. We then won the Carabao Cup 4-3 on penalties on February the 24th, 2019 after a 0-0 draw. We then beat Chelsea 2-1 in the Premier League on November the 23rd, 2019. Chelsea then won 2-1 in the Premier League on June the 25th, 2020. On January the 3rd, 2021, Manchester City won 3-1 away before in the FA Cup semi-finals. On April the 17th, 2021, Chelsea won 1-0. On May the 8th, 2021, Chelsea won 2-1 in the Premier League before winning 1-0 in Porto in the Champions League final on May the 29th, 2021. On September the 25th, 2021, Manchester City won 1-0 away before winning 1-0 at home in the Premier League on January the 15th, 2022. We then beat Chelsea 2-0 in the Carabao Cup third round on November the 9th, 2022, before winning 1-0 away on January the 5th, 2023. We then beat Chelsea 4-0 at home in the FA Cup third round on January the 8th, 2023, before we beat them 1-0 at home on May the 21st, 2023 in the Premier League. It was then a 4-4 draw away on November the 12th, 2023 in the Premier League, as well as a 1-1 draw at home on February the 17th, 2024. FA Cup holders and 7-time winners Manchester City do battle with 8-time winners Chelsea at Wembley on Saturday evening, with both clubs seeking to secure our place in this year's final. The citizens make the trip to the capital following a heartbreaking defeat to Real Madrid on penalties in the Champions League quarter-finals on Wednesday night, which ends our dreams of winning an unprecedented double treble. Chelsea, meanwhile, put Everton to the sword 6-0 in the Premier League on Monday, which extends their unbeaten run in all competitions to 8 since losing 1-0 after extra time to Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final at Wembley in February. There have been 8 previous meetings in the FA Cup between these two, as Manchester City have won 5 and Chelsea have won 3. Manchester City and Chelsea will meet for the 9th time in the world's oldest domestic cup competition this weekend, and the former boast the better head-to-head record, as we've won 5 out of 8 FA Cup encounters with the West Londoners. Just over 109 years have passed since these two teams first butted heads in the FA Cup third round back in February 1915, when 32,000 supporters at Hyde Road watched Chelsea claim a slender 1-0 away win over Manchester City. Bob Thompson scored late on to help Chelsea progress, but they went on to lose 3-0 against Sheffield United in the final. Manchester City then came out on top in our next 5 FA Cup meetings with Chelsea, starting off with a 2-0 home win in the 4th round in 1948, courtesy of goals from Billy Lineker and George Smith. The Citizens faced Chelsea 5 times in all competitions during the 1970-71 season, and although we failed to win both league meetings and either leg of a European Cup Winners' Cup tie, we did beat the West Londoners 3-0 in the FA Cup 4th round. Colin Bell starred for City with a brace at Stamford Bridge. 42 years later, Manchester City and Chelsea locked horns at Wembley for a semi-final in 2013. Goals from Sami Nasri and Sergio Aguero helped the Citizens win 2-1 and reach our second final in 3 years, but Roberto Mancini's men suffered a shock 1-0 defeat to Wigan in the showpiece event. Under the tutelage of Manuel Pellegrini, Manchester City beat Chelsea again in the FA Cup just 10 months later, this time in the 5th round thanks to goals either side of half-time from Stefan Jovetic and Nasri. However, Chelsea got their revenge in emphatic fashion in 2016, 101 years on from our first FA Cup from their first FA Cup win over the Citizens. Gus Hiddink named a strong Chelsea side that thumped a much-changed City outfit 5-1 at Stamford Bridge, with Diego Costa and Eden Hazard among the scorers to help the hosts progress to the quarter-finals. In 2021, Hakim Ziyech scored the only goal in a 1-0 semi-final win for Thomas Tuchel's side, 6 weeks before they came out on top against the Citizens by the same scoreline in the Champions League final. However, Pep Guardiola's Manchester City haven't lost any of our last 8 encounters with Chelsea in all competitions since that heartbreaking loss in Porto, and cruised to a comfortable 4-0 win in our most recent FA Cup clash in the 3rd round last season. Riyad Mahrez scored twice for the Citizens, who went on to beat rivals Manchester Manchester United, in the final, en route to completing a historic treble. So the previous FA Cup meetings starting on February the 20th, 1915, Chelsea won 1-0 in the third round. And then on January the 24th, 1948, Manchester City won 2-0 at home in the fourth round. The same round again next time around on January the 23rd, 1971, as Manchester City won 3-0 away. We then won at Wembley 2-1 in the FA Cup semi-final on April the 14th, 2013. We then beat them 2-0 in the FA Cup fifth round on February the 15th, 2014. Chelsea then won 5-1 in the fifth round on February the 21st, 2016, as they won 1-0 at Wembley on April the 17th, 2021 in the FA Cup semi-final. And then on January the 8th, 2023, Manchester City won 4-0 at home in the third round. Next up then, we will go to a combined 11, as English football's two most successful clubs over the past 20 years will do battle for the chance to add another trophy to our cabinet this Saturday, when Chelsea and Manchester City descend on Wembley for the first of the FA Cup semi-finals. These two clubs are the clearest examples of the impact foreign investment can have and has had in England, with both teams possessing histories highlighted with modest success and sporadic trophy triumphs until takeovers by wealthy foreign owners propelled them into the top of the game. Roman Abramovich led the way for Chelsea in 2003, as the Blues had won just one league title before that, but they have since lifted both the Premier League and FA Cup 5 times apiece, in addition to 2 Champions Leagues, most recently at Manchester City's expense, and another 2 Europa Leagues. Manchester City's transformation into a footballing superpower was even more recent, as we've won 7 of our 9 domestic top-flight titles within the past 12 years and making history by winning the treble of the Premier League, FA Cup and Champions League last season. Double treble dreams were dashed by Real Madrid in midweek as our Champions League defence came to an end, but we could still cling on to 2 of the trophies we won last season, with a win this weekend leaving us 90 minutes away from retaining the FA Cup for the first time. While Chelsea have fallen on harder times in the last couple of seasons, these two have provided some of the greatest players to have graced the English game over the past 2 decades especially, although there are plenty of honourable mentions from our pre-takeover histories too. Naturally, for a pair of teams whose most successful periods by far have come this century, the below combined 11 is made up of modern players who have helped to bring that success, although all the standout names from the more distant past were considered for places. We will start in net then, of course. While Abramovich took over at Stamford Bridge in 2003, it wasn't until a year later, with the arrival of Jose Mourinho and the influx of influential players that followed, that their true reign of success began. Petr Cech is right up there towards the top of the list when it comes to Chelsea's most influential buys, immediately establishing himself as a towering presence between the sticks. A clean sheet on his Premier League debut against Manchester United set the tone for what was to come. In his very first season at Chelsea, Cech broke the Premier League record for the longest time without conceding at 1,025 minutes, which stretched almost 3 months, and the Blues shipped an astonishingly low 15 goals all season, a Premier League record which still stands today. Needless to say, Chelsea also won the title that season, one of 15 trophies Cech lifted with the Blues. That haul includes 3 more league titles, the Champions League, Europa League, 4 FA Cups, 3 League Cups and 2 Community Shields. Including a spell with Arsenal at the end of his career, Cech kept an unparalleled 202 clean sheets in the Premier League, and in total kept 228 clean sheets in his 494 appearances for Chelsea across all competitions. So the honourable mentions for the goalkeeper were Bert Troutman, Peter Bonetti, Ederson, Frank Swift, Joe Hart and Joe Corrigan. A previous iteration of this team had Cesar Azpilicueta at right back, but Kyle Walker has since surpassed the former Chelsea stalwart and established himself as one of the best fullbacks the Premier League has ever seen. Even at 33 years old, Walker remains the benchmark for defensive pace in the English game, with his speed and reading of the play combining to make him an integral part of the Pep Guardiola side that has dominated domestically for a number of years. The England international is closing in on 300 appearances for the citizens across all competitions, and in that time he has won all of the biggest prizes: 5 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, 4 League Cups, a Champions League, a Club World Cup, and a Super Cup. Guardiola's relentless demands have seen Walker temporarily drop out of the first choice 11 at times, but he's always been able to adapt and reinvent himself, and will go down as one of the key figures of Manchester City's golden era. The honourable mentions for right back were Cesar Azpilicueta, Branislav Ivanovic, and Pablo Zabaleta. Next up, then, we will go to centre backs, as two titans and two of the greatest captains club football has ever produced in this country, certainly in the modern era. Both players were at the club before the mega money arrived, yet still managed to prove themselves as the heart, spine, and muscle of the team as higher profile superstars were brought in around them. John Terry was a Chelsea servant for 22 years as he arrived in 1995 before coming through the ranks and made his first team debut in 1998. 19 years, 717 appearances, and incredibly 67 goals later, the defensive stalwart said an emotional farewell to his boyhood club, moving on as their most successful ever captain and the most successful captain in Premier League history. Terry lifted the league title 5 times as skipper, in addition to 5 FA Cups, 3 League Cups, 2 Community Shields, the Champions League and Europa League. A 2-time Chelsea Player of the Year and 3-time UEFA Defender of the Year, Terry can lay a strong claim to being Chelsea's greatest ever servant. Kompany's arrival at Manchester City came just before the mega investment, and he proved to be one of the best bargains of the Premier League era as he inspired the club to trophy after trophy. Like Terry, Kompany developed an uncanny knack for not just keeping goals out, but also scoring big ones at the other end, most notably one in the Manchester Derby en route to the 2012 title, and his long-range screamer against Leicester en route to the 2019 crown, both crucial moments in two of the tightest title races in recent times. In all, Kompany scored 20 goals in 360 appearances for Manchester City, but both tallies would have undoubtedly been higher had he not been so blighted by injuries throughout his career. Even so, it speaks volumes that a player who only managed to play more than 28 league games in 3 of his 11 seasons at the club is so highly regarded. The Belgian left in 2019 with a 4th Premier League title to his name, in addition to winning 2 FA Cups, 3 League Cups and 2 Community Shields, after being named the Premier League Player of the Season in the 2011-12 season. The honourable mentions for centre-back were Ron Harris, Ruben Dias, John Stones, Ricardo Carvalho, Marcel Desailly, and Mike Doyle. Moving on to left-back then, Ashley Cole's switch from Arsenal to Chelsea in 2006 earned him widespread condemnation, not just from Arsenal fans but others who felt it was a money-chasing move from a boyhood club to a direct London rival. Looking back though, few would argue against it being a good decision. Already England's standout left-back, Cole took his game to a new level at Stamford Bridge and achieved the ultimate goal of Champions League glory in 2012. Cole did only get his hands on the Premier League trophy once at Chelsea, but he made up for that with 4 FA Cups to make him the most decorated player in the history of the oldest football competition in the world. Add to that a League Cup, Community Shield and Europa League, and Cole boasts an enviable trophy cabinet from his Chelsea days before eventually leaving on a free in 2014. The England stalwart ended his time at Stamford Bridge having made 338 appearances, 110 more than he did for Arsenal, and with 7 goals to his name. So the honourable mentions for left back were Graham Lasso, Glyn Pardo and Paul Power. Moving on to central midfield then, it may not be the most defensively minded central midfield pairing available, and the likes of N'Golo Kante, Claude Makelele, Rodri or even Yaya Toure would be worthy inclusions in a more balanced team, but really how could we leave either Kevin De Bruyne or Frank Lampard out? De Bruyne only narrowly missed out in our first iteration of this team in 2021, but he's continued to go from strength to strength and has now established himself as one of the first names on the team sheet. A former Chelsea player himself, De Bruyne has been the talisman of Guardiola's Manchester City for almost a decade now, providing crucial goals and more notably assists galore throughout that time. The Belgians closing in on 400 appearances for the Citizens, despite suffering a couple of injury-affected seasons during his time at the Etihad, and has scored over 100 goals in that time, while registering more than 160 assists. De Bruyne's trophy cabinet reflects that too. He boasts 5 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, 5 League Cups, a Champions League and a Club World Cup to his name on a team level, while individually he's a 4-time Manchester City Player of the Year, 2-time Premier League and PFA Players Player of the Year, 3-time Premier League Playmaker of the Season and 5-time member of the Premier League Team of the Year. Joining De Bruyne in the harder team is a former teammate of his at Stamford Bridge, Chelsea's record scorer Frank Lampard, who can lay a very strong claim to being the single greatest player in his club's history. Lampard was tipped for a bright future when he arrived from London rivals West Ham for £11 million in 2001, but no one could have expected him to go on and enjoy such a level of success at Stamford Bridge. By the time he left 13 years later, Lampard had become the club's best ever scorer from midfield, as legendary strikes were left in the wake of his remarkable scoring record. The England man netted 211 times in his 648 Chelsea appearances, including 5 consecutive seasons of 20-plus goals from the 2005-06 season to 2009-10, peaking at 27 goals in the latter year. Alongside John Terry, Lampard was the bedrock of Chelsea's success during that time, not just surviving the major overhaul after Abramovich's arrival, but thriving and emerging as the first name on the team sheet. Lampard helped Chelsea to 3 Premier League titles, 4 FA Cups, the Champions League, Europa League, 2 League Cups and 2 Community Shields, as well as being named Chelsea's Player of the Year 3 times. The 2004-05 season was the most impressive on an individual level, as his role in Chelsea's first title triumph saw him finish second in the voting for FIFA Player of the Year and the Ballon d'Or, as well as winning the FWA Footballer, PFA Fans Player and Premier League's Player of the Year awards. The honourable mentions for central midfield were Yaya Toure, Claude Makelele, N'Golo Kante, Rodri, Fernandinho, Dennis Wise, Alan Oakes and Michael Essien. Moving on to attacking midfield, and as if De Bruyne and Lampard wouldn't provide enough creativity from midfield, in front of them is a certain David Silva, a player many Manchester City fans would put in the conversation of our greatest ever. Silva joined in 2010 to help turn Manchester City from the noisy neighbours into the Premier League's dominant force, and by the time he left 10 years later, he'd helped himself to 4 Premier League titles, 2 FA Cups, 5 League Cups and 3 Community Shields, not to mention a World Cup and 2 Euros with Spain. The Spaniard's stats perhaps didn't stack up against others, but his artistry, genius and influence goes far beyond his 77 goals in 436 appearances. Even his more impressive tally of 141 assists in that time doesn't tell the full story, which you can perhaps only get get by asking the players who played alongside him to a man, they are effusive in their praise. I can almost hear the angry shouts of Chelsea fans as Gianfranco Zola misses out, but rest assured it was an impossibly tight goal, which Eden Hazard just about edges. The Belgian was widely regarded as the best player in the Premier League for much of his time here. For much of his time there, and he matched that quality with consistency and reliability, making more than 30 league appearances every year he was at Stamford Bridge. Hazard's wizardry, usually from the left but often in a free role, helped Chelsea to 2 Premier League titles, the FA Cup, League Cup and 2 Europa Leagues, in addition to a plethora of individual. It was the 2014-15 season which was arguably his peak as he inspired Chelsea to the title, winning the FWA Footballer, PFA Players Player and Premier League Player of the Season awards, having featured in every game and scored 14 goals. Hazard was named Chelsea Player of the Year in 4 of his 7 seasons at the club and eventually left for Real Madrid, having scored 110 goals and created 92 more in 352 appearances. The honourable mentions for attacking midfield were Gianfranco Zola, Colin Bell and Bernardo Silva. And moving on to the centre forwards then, 2 iconic forwards and the greatest strikers in the history of our respective clubs. Sergio Aguero rewrote the history books with his goal-scoring exploits for Manchester City, netting a club record 260 goals in 390 games over the course of his 10-season stay. One of those 260 goals stands out more than any other, with Aguero providing one of the most dramatic moments in English football history when Manchester City won the Premier League title on goal difference at the expense of local rivals Manchester United in 2012 with virtually the last kick of the season. It was an unforgettable moment which immediately solidified his place in Manchester City's history at the end of his very first season with the club, and after breaking our 44-year wait for a top-flight title, he was part of the next 4 that followed. Add to that an FA Cup, 6 League Cups and 3 Community Shields, and Aguero's Manchester City career was marked with trophies galore as well as records. The prolific centre-forward also left an undeniable mark on the Premier League as he became the highest scoring foreign player in the competition's history, netting a brace in his final top-flight outing to become the player who had scored the most goals for a single club in the division, although that mark was later overtaken by Harry Kane. With only 100 Premier League strikes to his name, Didier Drogba is some way behind Aguero in the goal-scoring stakes, but ask any Chelsea fan and he will be right up there with Terry Lampard and Ron Chopper Harris as the club's greatest ever. Drogba was the ultimate big game player, a priceless characteristic that was immortalised in 2012 when he scored an 88th minute equaliser to take the Champions League final to penalties and then scored the winning spot kick to ensure hero status on the club's greatest ever night. That was by no means a one-off though. Drogba scored 10 goals in 10 major finals throughout his career, 9 of which came for Arsenal as he helped them to came for Chelsea, as he helped them to 4 FA Cups and 3 League Cups, in addition to that Champions League glory. For some time, it looked as though his Champions League winning penalty would be his last kick for the club, but he returned for a brief second stint in the 2014-15 season to add a 4th Premier League crown to his list of honours. A 2-time Premier League Golden Boot winner over his 2 spells, Drogba scored 164 goals and created 87 more in 381 appearances for the Blues, including a particularly productive 2009-10 season, which saw him net 29 times in just 32 league outings. So the honourable mentions for centre forward are Jimmy Greaves, Bobby Tamblyn, Francis Lee, Eric Brook, Kerry Dixon, Peter Osgood and Tommy Johnson. So the all-time Manchester City and Chelsea combined 11 for me is Cech, Walker, Company, Terry, Ashley Cole, De Bruyne, Lampard, David Silva, Hazard, Drogba and Aguero. Next up then, we will move on to the Manchester City team news. Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola has admitted that he's unsure if Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne will be fit to feature in Saturday's FA Cup semi-final against Chelsea at Wembley Stadium. Both Haaland and De Bruyne were named in the Citizens' starting lineup for Wednesday's second leg with Real Madrid in the Champions League quarter-finals. However, Guardiola confirmed after the match that the attacking duo has to be taken off before his side were eliminated by Los Blancos on penalties. Both Haaland and De Bruyne couldn't continue after picking up niggling issues, with the former taken off before the beginning of extra time while the latter was withdrawn in the 112th minute. Injuries have troubled the City pair throughout the season, particularly De Bruyne, who was sidelined for around 5 months earlier in the season with a torn hamstring. Guardiola has since issued a positive update on De Bruyne, but he was unable to confirm whether the playmaker or Haaland will be available for selection on Saturday. Speaking at a press conference on Friday, Guardiola said, "Kevin is well. Erling, we will see. I don't know, I'm not a doctor." Haaland said a little bit of niggles and we'll see his evolution in the next hours. It was a tough game against Real Madrid, 120 minutes of action, high intensity for both sides. Erling felt something, a muscular issue that meant he couldn't continue. Kevin was exhausted after 5 months out injured. That's normal. We will see tomorrow. It's normal. The number of games this season and previous seasons with not much recovery and extra time and high intensity the way we play. Guardiola added, we put a lot of pressure in our game. They are human beings, not machines, and sometimes fatigue's there. Manuel Akanji also has to be taken off in extra time with against Real Madrid, but Guardiola was unable to give a specific update on the defender at his press conference. Fixtures continue to come thick and fast for Manchester City despite having our hopes of winning an unprecedented double treble ended in midweek as we are still vying to retain 2 domestic trophies. City were virtually at full strength against Real Madrid and with another important fixture against Chelsea up next, Guardiola will be tempted to stick with a similar side that began the match in midweek. Guardiola's positive update on De Bruyne suggests that he could be fit to retain his place in the first 11 against his former club, but Haaland's muscular concern, which is presumably a minor one, has given the Catalan boss plenty to ponder ahead of our Wembley visit. Manchester City coped without the presence of Haaland in 2 cup ties against Chelsea last season, and the Norwegian watched on as an unused sub as the Citizens won 4-0 and 2-0 in the third rounds of the FA Cup and Carabao Cup respectively. The potential absence of Haaland will most likely see Julian Alvarez handed a start as the central striker as he scored 3 goals in his previous 5 meetings with Chelsea. Manchester City will endeavour to put aside our heartbreaking Champions League exit when we lock horns with Chelsea in the semi-finals of the FA Cup at Wembley Stadium on Saturday evening. The Citizens' hopes of retaining our Champions League crown and winning an unprecedented double treble are now over after we were beaten 4-3 on penalties by Real Madrid following a 4-4 aggregate draw on Wednesday night. Pep Guardiola's side is still competing on 2 fronts though, as we look to defend both the Premier League title and FA Cup, as we seek to win the latter for the 8th time in our history. Erling Haaland played for 90 minutes against Real Madrid, but Guardiola confirmed after the match that the striker has to be withdrawn before the start of extra time, as he couldn't continue. The Citizens boss has since revealed that the Norwegian's niggles will be assessed ahead of kick-off on Saturday. Kevin De Bruyne, who scored the equaliser against Real Madrid in normal time, played the full 90 minutes in the first half of extra time. But like Haaland, the Belgian has to be taken off prior to the penalty shootout. Guardiola has since revealed that the playmaker's well, so he'll presumably be fit to make the matchday squad on Saturday. Like De Bruyne, Manuel Akanji played the full 90 minutes in the first half of extra time, but then has to be taken off prior to the penalty shootout, and the defender will have his fitness assessed ahead of the clash with Chelsea. Manchester City manager Pep Guardiola will hope to have a fully fit squad at his disposal for Saturday's FA Cup semi-final against Chelsea at Wembley Stadium. The citizens were knocked out of the Champions League quarter-finals by Real Madrid on penalties on Wednesday night, and Guardiola confirmed after the match that Erling Haaland, Kevin De Bruyne and Manuel Akanji all asked to be withdrawn prior to the shootout as they couldn't continue. At a press conference on Friday, Guardiola delivered a positive update on De Bruyne, but he was unable to confirm whether the playmaker or Haaland, who's nursing a niggling muscle issue, would be available for selection on Saturday. Akanji, meanwhile, will also be assessed ahead of kick-off. Manchester City were boosted by the return of Kyle Walker to the starting lineup in midweek following his recovery from a hamstring injury. The right back played the entire 120 minutes against Real Madrid, so it remains to be seen whether he can see out another full match on Saturday. John Stones and Nathan Ake, who have both recently recovered from injuries, were named in the matchday squad in midweek. The former came on for the final 8 minutes of extra time, and the defensive duo were in contention to play in some capacity against Chelsea, as are Ruben Diaz and Josko Vardio. Guardiola will weigh up whether to stick with first-choice keeper Ederson, who scored a penalty in the shootout against Real Madrid, or to recall Stefan Ortega, who has started all four of City's FA Cup ties so far this season. Rodri is expected to continue in his deep line midfield role, and Bernardo Silva and ex-Chelsea man Mateo Kovacic are also in contention to start in midfield, while Phil Foden, Jack Grealish and Jeremy Doku are set to battle for a place on the flanks, although Foden could operate the number 10 role if De Bruyne is not handed a start. So the predicted team for Manchester City is Ortega in goal, Walker, Stones, Diaz and Ake as a back four, with Rodri, Foden and De Bruyne in midfield, with Alvarez, and Doku out wide, Foden on the right, De Bruyne, Alvarez, Rodri in the middle, as I said before, with Haaland up top. Moving on to the Chelsea team news then. Chelsea head coach Mauricio Pochettino has seen his injury list reduced ahead of Saturday's FA Cup semi-final against Manchester City. For much of the season, Pochettino has been required to contend with an array of players consistently unavailable for selection, leading to youngsters being promoted to senior matchday squads on a regular basis. That remained the case on Monday night when the Blues squared off against Everton in the Premier League, still being able to run out 6-0 victors in the process. Axel Disasi, Enzo Fernandez and Raheem Sterling were all missing from the squad, and separate reports have since emerged about the latter two. On Tuesday, it was claimed that Fernandez may undergo surgery on a hernia issue, which would subsequently rule him out until May. Meanwhile, Sterling reportedly suffered food poisoning at some point last week and led to his absence from training up until Wednesday. Prior to Pochettino's pre-match press conference ahead of the Wembley showdown with Manchester City, Chelsea revealed an official injury update. None of Disasi, Fernandez or Sterling featured among the list of names, suggesting that they will each be available for selection. The update also indicated that Christopher Nkunku had returned to partial training for the first time since suffering a hamstring injury against Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final in February. However, Pochettino stated to reporters that time would be required to see whether Nkunku suffers any reaction to returning to the grass, seemingly ruling him out of Saturday's game. Levi Colwill also appears in line to miss another game with a toe injury, with it being revealed that he was still undergoing a rehabilitation program. Pochettino will naturally be tempted to stick with the same starting lineup from the demolition of Everton, but it would come as a surprise if that were to be the case. Disasi's aerial presence is superior to that of Thiago Silva and Trevor Chalobah, and Pochettino will be eager to have the Frenchman back for that purpose as Chelsea bid to handle Erling Haaland. Fernandez is also likely to get the nod over either Noni Madueke or Mikhailo Modric in order to form a partnership alongside Moises Caicedo in the centre, allowing Conor Gallagher to be deployed further forward. Ben Chilwell could also be preferred to Mark Cucurella at left back, but the England international has just 10 minutes under his belt since the middle of the March international break. Chelsea are back in action on Saturday evening when they square off against Manchester City in the FA Cup semi-finals. Although Mauricio Pochettino's side have recently been criticised, the Blues bounced back with a 6-0 win over Everton in the Premier League. However, Chelsea have already suffered one heartbreak at Wembley Stadium this season as they lost to Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final, and Pochettino will be hoping that his side can continue their unbeaten run against the 2023 winners from earlier in the season. Levi Colwill has been absent since the beginning of March with a toe injury. However, the defender has recently returned to light training and may have an outside chance of returning against Arsenal on Tuesday. Christopher Nkunku has been absent since suffering a hamstring injury during the Carabao Cup final against Liverpool at the end of February. Although he was initially expected to return after the March international break, the France international remains out of contention, even though he's since competed in partial training. Wesley Fofana faces a battle to return to action before the end of the season due to a serious knee injury that he suffered ahead of the season. All things considered, he's highly likely to be risked until next season. Reece James underwent hamstring surgery towards the end of last year, and it's currently unclear when the England international could be available for selection. Leslie Ogachukwu picked up a hamstring injury towards the end of 2023, and Chelsea haven't offered any indications of when he could potentially return to first-team training. Romeo Lavia has made just one sub-appearance since joining Chelsea last summer, and the midfielder won't be available for selection until next season due to a thigh problem. As a result of a knee injury and illness, Robert Sanchez has been limited to FA Cup appearances since the turn of the year. However, having missed the game with Everton due to the latter, the keeper will only feature on the bench at best, having returned to partial training. Chelsea have no players suspended for this match. However, midfielder Kesserai Cassidy is unavailable due to being cup-tied through representing Leicester earlier in the competition. Chelsea could be without as many as 11 players for Saturday's FA Cup semi-final showdown with holders Manchester City at Wembley Stadium. Wesley Fofana with a knee injury, Romeo Lavia with a thigh injury, Reece James and Leslie Ogachukwu both with hamstring injuries, and Levi Colwill with a toe injury all remain unavailable for selection, while young midfielder Kesserai Cassidy is cup-tied after representing Leicester on loan earlier this season. Raheem Sterling and Robert Sanchez both missed Chelsea's thumping 6-0 Premier League win over Everton last Monday through illness, but the Blues duo should be fit to return to the matchday squad on Saturday, while Axel Disasi, Enzo Fernandez and Christopher Nkunku with a hamstring injury will be assessed ahead of kick-off, the latter of whom has returned to partial team training. Mauricio Pochettino will consider recalling left-back Ben Chilwell to his starting lineup at the expense of Mark Cucurella, with a potential absence of Disasi could see Trevor Chalobah and Benoit Badiashile battle for a start in central defence alongside Thiago Silva. Conor Gallagher moved into a slightly deeper midfield role alongside Moises Caicedo in the absence of Fernandez against Everton last time out. However, the former is expected to move into a more advanced midfield position if Fernandez is deemed fit to return to the 11. Former Manchester City man Cole Palmer starred for Chelsea in the number 10 role against Everton as he scored 4 to take his impressive goal tally in all competitions to 25. The 21-year-old could continue in the same position on Saturday, but he may move over to the right side of attack if Gallagher starts further forward. Pochettino has opted against punishing either Noni Madueke or Nicholas Jackson following their penalty spat with Palmer against Everton, and the Blues pair will be in contention to start an attack along with Mikhailo Mudryk. So the predicted team for Chelsea then is Petrovic in goal, Gusto, Chalobah, Silva and Chilwell as a back four, with Caicedo and Fernandes in midfield, Palmer, Gallagher and Mudryk behind Jackson in attack. Chelsea's positive performance against Everton and recent league meetings with Manchester City should provide Pochettino's men with confidence heading into Saturday's FA Cup tie, and having scored at least 2 in each of their last 8 matches in all competitions, the Blues will fancy their chances of breaching the Citizens' leaky back line. However, I expect a response from Guardiola and co, who will be determined to avoid elimination from 2 competitions in the space of just 4 days. If City are at full strength, we should find a way to come out on top and secure our spot in the final. So I predict this game will finish Manchester City 3, Chelsea 2. So that is it for this video then. Everybody, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Dugout Daily, the football channel. Hit the Apex, the F1 channel. And at MCFC Hibs on Twitter. Everybody, thank you all so much for watching. And we'll speak to you all soon. Take care and goodbye for now. Cheers, everyone.